and the guest numbers are adding up now. Give a couple of moments for people to get locked in and get their technology started. All right, let's get underway and not punish the punctual. My name is Kim Smythe. I'm CEO and President of the Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy to have you all here today. This is a bit of an ostentatious occasion. We have two ministers from our provincial government with us here today. I'm very excited to welcome them, both Minister Sheila Malcolmson, the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and Minister Ravi Kahlon, and I try to get this right, Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. I hope I've got that in the right order. Before we get going today, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people here in Nanaimo. That includes the Nanaimo, the Stanas, and Suminas. And I pay respect for the privilege of being able to live, work, and play on these territories. I'm going to just explain a little context for the event here before I turn it over to our moderator. October is Small Business Month. That's one thing that we have to look to, and we have an ostentatious week next week, and it's homelessness, and Sheila will tell me the correct title when we get to Sheila, but Homelessness Action Week, I believe it is. So two things that are very important to us right now is economic recovery, of course, coming out of the pandemic, the situation with jobs, and the fact that British Columbia has the lowest unemployment rate in Canada, and touch on some innovation that the province is engaging in to get us through economic recovery. But at this point, I would like to turn it over to the moderator. Aaron Sirkin is a business advisor with MNP. MNP is the sponsor today, and I thank them very much for taking that bold step and becoming sponsor of this virtual event. Aaron is also a director with the board of the Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. So I take additional delight in introducing Aaron and turning the podium, as it were, the virtual podium, over to him. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you so much, Kim. Welcome everyone from chambers across the island and individuals and businesses that have joined us today. Great to see strong numbers for today's event. MNP is pleased to sponsor today's luncheon event. We are fortunate, as Kim mentioned, to have two provincial ministers here, the Honorable Sheila Malcolmson and the Honorable Ravi Kahlon. This is a great opportunity, I think, to hear from these public policy makers and influencers to help drive the meaningful conversations about recovery, what that looks like, and how we can become and build a stronger, more resilient community for the people and businesses on the island and across the province. On that note, it is my pleasure to introduce Sheila Malcolmson, our local MLA here in Nanaimo and BC's Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. She's also the Vice Chair of the Cabinet Working Group on Mental Health, Addictions, and Homelessness, and a member of the Cabinet Committee on Social Initiatives. Minister, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaron. Good morning, good afternoon, friends. I wish we were sitting at a table together having lunch, but I'm really grateful to Kim and his team at the Chamber for finding a way for us to continue to be connected. I'm honored to be with you on Nanaimo territory, and really glad that we have my friend, the Minister Ravi Kahlon, who's from Vancouver Island. We've got a strong Vancouver Island team here that he in particular can hear from our members. Nanaimo is known by Nanaimo as the gathering place, and it is a real hub. I know how important it is to all of the local chambers, and how much our community is really a model of resilience. Our transformation from a resource extraction town to one that is centered around our university and our healthcare and social service supports, not to mention the tech sector, is just a real model for the province. And so I'm really glad we're having that conversation today, particularly at the end of a really hard year and a half. The pandemic has been hard in every way, and on my file, we have shown Island Health has reported a 44% increase in people coming forward between 2016 and now seeking mental health supports through our local services throughout Vancouver Island. So what we are feeling ourselves and what we're seeing on the streets is in fact confirmed by the stats. And we know how the pandemic has made everything worse. Mental health pressures, increases in drug toxicity, and the terrible rise in overdose deaths. The exacerbation of the pre-existing homelessness and social disorder. It is a hard time for those living this hard life, hard for communities, hard for businesses. And so while we have been adding services and supports in an unprecedented way, we are absolutely swimming against a rising tide of need. So despite all those difficulties, we are continuing as a province to innovate in a number of ways. And I am going to run through a rapid fire list of things that are in progress because I know the headlines tend to be hard. I want to make sure that I take the opportunity in this space that the Chamber's given us to talk about some of the supports and innovations that are happening. Our roadmap for mental health and substance use supports and our plan to combat these problems is well underway. The progress report that we published last month shows indeed that more people are connected to services and supports than ever before in British Columbia's history. In April, we secured the largest investment ever in mental health and addictions in British Columbia's history, $500 million. I'm leading work on a number of Canadian firsts. We now have nurses, registered nurses, able to prescribe medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. Nurses before couldn't even prescribe an aspirin. This is a breakthrough. We are leading, the only place in Canada that offers prescribed safe supply as a way to separate people from the toxic drug supply, illicit drug supply, and decriminalization, the only province in Canada that is pursuing a Health Canada federal order to assert that drug addiction is a healthcare problem, not a criminal justice problem. And if we're successful in our application, then we will no longer be spending scarce police resources on prosecuting people who have small amounts of illicit drugs because we want to send them into the healthcare system, not into the criminal justice system. Just this week, we announced $132 million for British Columbia to build additional addiction treatment and recovery supports. Some of the examples of investments that we'll see on Vancouver Island, new supportive recovery services for women on Vancouver Island. Already we have expanded the successful Indigenous-led alcohol treatment and recovery center in Port Hardy. Just this last week, I think, Island Health issued a request for proposals for new treatment and recovery beds in our region, 6 sobering and assessment beds for Tofino and Ucluelet, 8 supportive recovery beds in Oceanside, and 8 sobering and assessment beds in Nanaimo. This major investment builds on the recent expansions. In January, we implemented 95 new adult treatment and recovery beds. 20 of those were in Nanaimo. And we're also doubling youth treatment beds. It'll be 123 new treatment beds by the time we're finished this work. Also really proud of Vancouver Island University on the innovation side. Has designed a new mass spectrometry system of testing illicit drugs. That's up and running in Victoria now, but again, an example of local innovation. Thank goodness for those VIU students that are thinking outside the box. This is saving lives already. Complex care housing is another assignment that the Premier's given me, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in the Q&A, but it is a system of healthcare support and housing that goes beyond our existing supportive housing. You can think of it for the people that have been evicted from supportive housing because they have untreated mental health and addiction challenges, or maybe living with acquired brain injury. Those are the kind of folks that we'll be inviting inside this system. That work is well underway. I'm grateful to a lot of volunteer time and our core planning table that's been hard at work this summer. We'll have news on that soon. Also, on the Indigenous reconciliation side, so much understanding and support that's coming from our community, all of our Vancouver Island communities in the wake of the revelations of lost ones discovered at residential schools. It hit first at Kamloops, but Penelakut Island right in our community shines a particular light on that, the ongoing trauma and therefore mental health and addictions that have flown from that, that unacceptable damage that was done. Right here in our own backyard, the Nanaimo Indian Hospital is work that Nanaimo now has asked us to take up, and that is work we'll do together. These are largely federal government led, but I'm very encouraged by our province's deep commitment of funds to get that work happening quickly. And again, in my file on the Addictions Treatment and Recovery Center, one example of our local ways that we're working with partners is the rebuild of Soughton Laylam's extremely successful trauma and addictions recovery center. It'll move from Lanceville, from Snana's territory, it'll move to Duncan. And we broke ground on that this June, and that's something that our government is helping to fund. And we are encouraging the federal government to do the same and follow our good lead. Another cornerstone, which I know will resonate with a lot of people, is our investments in mental health and addiction support for young people. This is the cornerstone of our plan, Pathway to Hope. We are determined to get more resources that attend to young people's challenges while they are still small challenges, hoping that with a deeper investment that we can set them up for success throughout their lives. We, in this year's budget, put in $97 million for new supports for children and youth. This includes integrated child and youth teams, which work alongside school district boundaries, within school district boundaries, and in many cases with the school system, but also in community. Our budget investment will add 350 new full-time mental health workers in communities across British Columbia. And in the coming weeks, we'll be able to say for sure that we have implemented the first Vancouver Island one. This will be in the Comox school district. We are also continuing to expand the Foundry networks, extremely successful. We'll have a couple new ones opening on North Island in the coming months, I believe. A reminder that Foundry is both a physical center where young people can walk in and get connected to primary care, reproductive health, mental health, and addiction support, the whole range. But there's also an online virtual app where people can get one-on-one counseling, group counseling. If you've got young people in your life, I'd love if you can encourage them to download the app, Foundry BC, kick the tires on that, let us know whether it resonates. And know also that our government is funding continued expansion of the physical Foundry centers. And if anybody in the community wants to get behind Nanaimo's, what I thought was a fantastic application, but the program was oversubscribed last time around. The lead agency here in Nanaimo is Canadian Mental Health Association BC. Please get on board. We need as many partners as we can to have that be successful locally. Another Vancouver Island University innovation, well, maybe not innovation, but particularly the student movement really called the alarm, rang the alarm on the supports that post-secondary students need. They're under so much pressure. And so our Here to Talk program, which is immediate 24/7 counseling available for post-secondary students across British Columbia, it was spawned here, coming out of a very tragic event on our Nanaimo campus. Since we launched it in April 2020, it's been accessed more than 12,000 times. I'll end by saying we know how much pressure frontline local businesses are under. I hope that you'll kick the tires also on our new website, which is workmentalhealthbc.ca. You can register there for training. You can, as an employer, lead those difficult conversations in the workplace around mental health. And if you are able to show up as a leader and encourage people to take on those courageous conversations, I think it can really make a difference leading from the front. There is more to do, and there is a lot of reason for hope. Especially grateful for a platform like this to be able to let people know about some of the resources that are being added, and know that we'll continue as a government to be absolutely dedicated to working with you, identifying what is needed in our communities and adding the resources as we need them. I'm really encouraged that my friend and fellow minister Ravi Kahlon is here to talk with you about the good work that he's doing on our commitment to COVID recovery and the ways that we're working together and innovating. But in the meantime, I've got an idea that the audience has got some questions for me. I always love hearing about your priorities. And so I'll turn it back to Aaron Sirkin, again, with gratitude for you sponsoring and hosting. And thanks again, Kim, always for the opportunity to connect and engage. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for fitting so much into a brief 10-minute address. You've been hyper busy. I imagine Homelessness Action Week, the 10th to the 17th, you've been even busier. And with your return to the House, add that to the list of things on your plate over the last couple of weeks. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate your being here. I'm going to take a couple of questions off of the chat box to start with, but then I have some other questions that were prepared in advance from inquiries that were sent to us from members and followers. Mila Rolich asks, how can we help reach towards an Nanaimo foundry, Sheila? Do we just reach out to Canadian Mental Health Association directly, or how do we indicate support? Reach out to Jason there and ask him how we might be able to support him?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mila, and thank you, Jason, for leading the last charge. I think it's always helpful to show as many partners as possible. So, supporting Canadian Mental Health Association, BC, our Nanaimo chapter, they just deliver so much good work. Anybody that wants to come alongside with them and reactivate their planning committee, that would be the way to go. Nanaimo's application was strong. The need is deep. You know what a big advocate I am as a local MLA. I also recognize that this is a super competitive process. So to the extent that we can show people working together and community support in a single application. Last time there were 2 applications from Nanaimo, which didn't help. So coming together is what we need to show, and to show that we are committed as a community to supporting young people in their journey towards mental health, true mental health, is a powerful thing.
And this is such an important issue. We've spoken on it. Child and youth mental health is we need all the support and assistance we can get in that area. I want to talk a little bit about the sobering beds that were announced. That's 22 new beds on Vancouver Island, I believe I counted, or 22 beds in total. How is that announcement significant? Explain from your perspective.
Yeah, I want to also emphasize, and thanks for bringing it back up again, what has been announced, the details been announced so far is really just the first step. Because the health authorities are our service deliverers, and they're fighting 2 public health emergencies and still rolling out an unprecedented vaccination campaign. We're asking a lot of them. So this week I was able to say, these are the pieces that we know are coming, but there is absolutely more. There is definitely no one-size-fits-all treatment and recovery model for people living with addiction challenges. And so we are taking our signals from the people that are working on the front line, from people with lived and living experience, and from the health authorities' identification of needs, to bring a diversity and a complexity or not complexity, but again, a diversity of approaches. And we also want to have these sobering beds closer to where the communities are, so that people don't necessarily have to leave their support system. So that's why I'm so encouraged that Tofino, Ucluelet, Oceanside, Nanaimo, surrounding communities are going to get access to this first step. So this is something that allows a stay up to 24 hours with a nurse who can access and monitor the sobering person. That intention is to provide short-term respite and services that include assessments, food, laundry, just some of the most basic things. And then another step, which we're also opening up, are the supportive recovery beds. And they allow residential stays in a substance-free environment for up to 3 months. And sometimes, honestly, that goes longer, just depending where the person's at. And so those services include coaching, community reintegration, counseling, case management. And then a big part of the announcement on Wednesday, not just for Vancouver Island, but for the whole province, is really identifying how we can fill the gaps. If someone has to wait between sobering, detox, supportive recovery, how can we support them so that they don't fall through the cracks at some of those most tender times? And that's really the systems construction work that we're doing, given that when we took government in 2017, that continuum of care did not exist for mental health and addictions the way that it does for primary care. And that's a system that we're determined to build.
Yeah, I thank your ministry for that. So important. Can you point out some additional island highlights from the Pathway to Hope Progress report that was only a few weeks old?
Yeah. So really encouraged by the work that we've been doing. And again, so the Pathway to Hope is a 10-year plan. We're 2 and a bit years into it. And so with a real focus on youth at the beginning part. Some of our particular successes are on the Foundry side. Foundry centers are already open in Victoria and Campbell River, and the centers in development are Comox Valley and Port Hardy, and more to come. Those are the ones that have been announced already, but not the ones that were funded in our April budget. So again, there's room for more. We've funded community counseling agencies to be able to support people with their counseling needs, making it either free or affordable. Esquimalt Neighborhood House Society, Pacific Center Family Service Association, Salt Spring Island Community Services, Nanaimo First Nation, Vancouver Island Counseling Center for immigrants and refugees. So trying to, again, hit people or connect people to care through a whole variety of places. The Here to Talk program I talked about a little bit already. We also have kind of a similar program called Care for Caregivers, careforgivers.ca, where particularly people in long-term care and healthcare are able to access mental health webinars, knowing that these are sectors that are under particular pressure. And then maybe just a final one that I'll touch on is the work that we're doing with First Nations Health Authority and Island Health on Vancouver Island. There are 41 First Nations-led mental health and wellness initiatives that have been funded across British Columbia, 166 communities province-wide, and knowing that there's a real cross-fertilization through First Nations Health Authority, that we, that all of those nations and partners learn from each other. We are funding, in addition to the Southern Lalem Center that I mentioned earlier, also on Cormorant Island, the Namgis Treatment Center, we are also funding a capital investment to replace an aged system built by the federal government but not maintained. And so the province has stepped up. Those are all markers on Pathway to Hope that we have, that we can show are done already. And then now we just turn our focus on the next wave of construction and addition of services that are badly needed in BC.
So much work to do and so much that's being done right now. We've made such progress. It's hard to believe that we lived in a province without a ministry of mental health and addictions for forever. And now just you listing the work that's being done and seeing the outcomes of that after our conversations on mental health, not just the dire circumstances that need to be dealt with, but just our day-to-day mental health. And I thank you for the panel that you sat on with medical health officer for Nanaimo and Dr. Fairweather back in the spring on mental health and the situation that we find ourselves in as a result of living in a pandemic, and it's my first pandemic, so everything is new and fresh and learning for me. I'm hoping that we can circle back on that and have a revisit to that same panel to discuss mental health, both from the provincial perspective and the care that we provide to the population, and also about our own ongoing mental health and living and working together through COVID-19. So I thank you very much for your words here today. I hope that you can stay on while Minister Kahlon has a turn at the mic. But I appreciate very much the time you've spent with us here today, Minister, and thank you so much for doing everything that you do. I'll turn it back over to Aaron as he will do the introduction of Minister Kahlon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and agreed. Thank you, Minister Malcolmson, for the summary and updates of the initiatives and programs. I think it's great to hear what's happening on the road to recovery. Carrying on, as many of you know, October is Small Business Month. Kim mentioned it in the initial intro, where we celebrate local entrepreneurs and their contributions to local communities and the BC economy. With COVID and the recovery, I think this is an extra special month to celebrate the small businesses. And on that note, next, it's my pleasure to introduce Minister Ravi Kahlon, MLA from North Delta and Minister of Jobs, Recovery and Innovation. Minister will bring us up to date on the provincial economic recovery programs, policies in place. And I turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you, Aaron, and thank you, of course, Kim. Before I begin, I just want to say how amazing my friend Sheila is. The work that she's doing around mental health is so critically important in every corner of this province. And just listening to her and just seeing how you structured this talk today is a reminder that there is no separation from the social programs that are critically important to the economic future of BC. So thank you for structuring it the way that you've structured it today. And thank you for Sheila for being so amazing and all the work you're doing that's helping a lot of people in my community and throughout the province. I'll start off by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And again, I'm Ravi Kahlon. I'm the MLA for the community of North Delta, and also very privileged to serve as the Minister for Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation. As you can imagine, it's been a very busy time, and COVID-19 has really challenged us all. In addition to being one of the most significant public health crises in living memory, COVID-19 has caused enormous economic uncertainty. And it continues to be a very difficult time for many workers, families, communities across the province. Throughout the pandemic, people have looked to each other for support, and they've looked to government for leadership. From the beginning, that's what we've been doing. We're not there yet, but I'm pleased to say our economic recovery is well underway. BC leads Canada in growth and pandemic job recovery. On Vancouver Island, we're seeing over 14,000 more people working today than at the start of the pandemic. As small businesses are reopening, people are getting back to work, and hard-hit industries and sectors are getting back on their feet. And that's a real tribute to all Vancouver Islanders and British Columbians. So congratulations for the work that everyone is doing. But all of this didn't happen by accident. It happened because British Columbians came together and supported quick action to help people, communities, and businesses pull through. Like the BC Recovery Benefit, which helped more than 2.5 million British Columbians pay their bills. Like support targeted to help small businesses stay open. Like infrastructure projects that are putting thousands of people back to work. And it happened because over the last 4 years, our government has established lasting partnerships with business, labor, First Nations, and communities to support people and position BC for growth and success. I just want to highlight a few examples. With the vast majority of jobs requiring post-secondary degree or diploma, it's critical that we give British Columbians the skills they need to succeed. And that's why we're working with colleges, institutes, universities to create 2,900 new tech spaces. This is the single largest expansion of post-secondary education in generations. And with the world moving to zero-emission future, BC must lead on climate action. That's why we're working with business, workers, First Nations, environmentalists to implement Clean BC, which is one of the most ambitious climate plans in North America. And it's one of the many reasons we're partnering with First Nations, government to government, to advance reconciliation and support new economic opportunities. With more parents struggling to raise a family and stay in the workforce, affordable, quality childcare is more important than ever. And that's why we're helping parents balance the needs of work and home by establishing a $10 a day childcare and partnering with Ottawa recently to create 30,000 new childcare spaces over the next 5 years. And we're helping those families make ends meet by cutting ICBC rates, eliminating MSP premiums, and investing in more affordable housing than any time in BC's history. And I could go on, but I know time is limited. But my point is simple. Initiatives like these and so many others have set a new direction for the province, an unprecedented and long overdue investment in our people and our future. It's ambitious, it's bold, but it's right for the moment. But here's the thing, and the main point that I want to leave all of you today with. As hard as we've worked to pull it together through this pandemic, there is no going back to the way that things were before. COVID-19 has exposed vulnerabilities like growing inequality that we must confront. And it's shown that when we pull it together, we can overcome big challenges. That's why the Premier has asked me to take on this opportunity to work with British Columbians to set an order and to set a long-term plan for economic security and growth. A plan that will look 10, 15 years down the road to a province that we want for ourselves, for our children, for future generations. And for me, building that plan starts with listening. As a First Nation leader once told me, before we can lead, we must first listen and learn. And so I'm traveling in person and over Zoom to listen to British Columbians from every region of this province, from all walks of life, and from every sector of our economy, asking you for your best ideas. I'm listening to British Columbians and rural communities about how we can get more value and more jobs from the land while protecting our environment. Listening to students about how we can get them to realize their dreams. I'm listening to business leaders and innovators and entrepreneurs about how we can bring new ideas to market, secure access to capital and talent, and scale up homegrown enterprises. With labor, community leaders, and non-for-profit sector, how we can add and strengthen the social fabric that ties us together. With better wages, good public services, and supports for families. Working with Indigenous peoples and First Nation communities about advancing reconciliation, economic growth, and of course, justice. And working with people like economist Mariana Mazzucato, who I'm delighted to say is helping our efforts. It's important to say that our economic plan will be built for British Columbians by British Columbians, but it's also important that we learn from the experiences of other countries. And Mariana is a world leader, an expert on how to build strong economies that are capable of confronting some of the world's biggest challenges. She is an invaluable resource for all of us. I'm delighted to say that she's working with us. But I'm also delighted to be with all of you. I know British Columbians who love our province and want the best for our future. And because of that, the work that we have to do is critically important. And this is our moment. We need to work together to seize the opportunity in front of us. Vancouver Island and British Columbia have so many advantages. We have strong public education, strong healthcare system. We're home to world-class colleges and universities. We have a thriving entrepreneurial culture. We care deeply about our communities and obligations that we have to each other. Our friends and family and neighbors come from every part of the globe to enjoy the world-class tourism industry that we have here in the province, in particular on Vancouver Island. Many folks on the call may not know, but last week, Wickenish in Tofino landed a spot on Travel and Leisure magazine's list of 100 best hotels in the world. And also last week, Condé Nast Travelers magazine, the Reader's Choice Awards, named Vancouver Island as the second best island in all of North America. And as minister, I've been so inspired by British Columbians, and I know that we need to set our sights high. We can build a future where we want for ourselves, for our future generations, one that is an inclusive future that supports workers and their families and helps most of the people that have been harmed most in this pandemic. And also an economy that is sustainable, a sustainable future where we can meet our climate change commitments and leave our children and grandchildren with clean air and clean water that they deserve. And of course, an innovative future that draws on the talent and ambition of every British Columbian, that adds value, rewards risk, and is open to new ideas. I really want to say that I want to say a big thank you to Kim and the team for inviting me. It's been a real privilege to been able to come a couple times to speak and also to hear from your members. And I look forward to hearing about some of the questions that your members may have. So thank you, Kim and Aaron.
Thanks so much, Minister Kahlon. I really appreciate the work that you're putting in, just as much as the work that Minister Malcolmson is putting into her ministry. You've been a busy boy over these past 20 months, and it's refreshing that you be able to join us for a short period of time here today. I wonder if you can expand on some of the economic opportunities being created for First Nations. We're very close to our First Nations peoples in Nanaimo. We work closely with Nanaimo. We have board representation at the Chamber of Commerce from Nanaimo, and we're also working on a memorandum of understanding to talk about economic reconciliation in our own backyard, and just hoping that we have an occasion to actually sit down in a signing ceremony with Nanaimo soon, whenever soon is in our new world. So could you address maybe some specifics around economic reconciliation?
Yeah, and great question, and thank you for the work you're doing to start building those relationships. Those relationships are critically important. I know my colleagues and I all have this little book that is critically important on truth and reconciliation, and Article 92 specifically highlights the importance of the work that we have ahead of us and that we must do. I'll start by saying that when there's economic development with First Nations, everyone benefits. And until we see the opportunities that we all have that are able to be there for all First Nations in BC, we will not see the true potential of British Columbia. And so some of the work we're doing is directly connected to Article 92, which is around skills and training and development. Just recently, we announced $95 million. A lot of money was dedicated towards training opportunities for First Nations and Indigenous peoples in BC. We just recently announced, as you'll know, Kim, the Launch Online program, which was helping businesses to set up their e-commerce, set up their online presence. And we took originally 10 million, but in the end, $40 million. And we put a 35% minimum target on that must go to Indigenous and First Nations communities and rural communities. And what we found was 43% of all the applicants that came from those communities. And so it shows you the demand that there is there and the opportunities that we have there. We also just last week announced Innovator Skills Initiative, which I am super excited about, which creates the opportunity for young people in particular who want to enter the tech sector, but are having trouble getting their first job. And so this basically helps the private sector up to $10,000 to help take on an employee, give them the experience they need in their first opportunity in tech. And because we know if tech is expanding at the rate it's expanding at, and we know that part of economic recovery means that the communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic get real opportunities to benefit from that program, all the programs of government. And so this program in particular is going to help us go a long way. And we're also part of the economic recovery conversation, the post-pandemic recovery conversation. We're engaging with First Nations, nation to nation, government to government, to talk about what does it look like and how do we assess whether what we're doing is working? We got to look beyond GDP as a metric of success, and we got to start looking at other ways of measuring what that success looks like. And First Nations have come forward with some great ideas on what that might look like, and it's exciting for us, I think, as a province to head in a new direction. But those conversations are ongoing.
Fantastic. I really want to point out and point out the appreciation also for having BC Chamber and individual chambers from around the province also contribute to the recovery plan and have some serious discussions in Victoria with yourself and the Premier on how we do this, how do we balance all of these things going forward. I want to get to the elephant in the room right away here, and that's supply chain issues, labor force shortages, and rising cost of living. We had a pretty rowdy discussion yesterday about these 3 points, the connection they have with each other, and the implications for our future.
Yeah, great questions, and three big topics: supply chain, and our workforce, and affordability. And so I'll start with the supply chains. I don't think the public fully appreciates how much strain is on our supply chains, and certainly businesses have felt it. And we had a supply chain resiliency program, part of Stronger BC, where we knew that there's going to be serious challenges on our networks. And so we basically went to the manufacturing community and said, okay, if you have a proposal with an investment that you're willing to make to help realign and help address some of those challenges we have, come forward. And we were expecting 30 to 50 applications. We had over 400 manufacturers come forward with ideas, and we were able to proceed with that. We are going to be announcing very soon the recipients of that proposal, but it's a real challenge. And even when you look at food security, for example, we know that California and other jurisdictions had real challenges with the pandemic, just like we did. But if you add climate change on top of that, it's a perfect storm. And just recently, we met with some wine producers and investors who are now looking to start up operations here, and some on the island as well, because they see the water shortage as a real pressure on California. And that means more opportunities for us to be able to produce food for the rest of the world, not only for British Columbia. But that issue is going to be critically important, and I know that the Chamber has put forward recommendations on things that we need to address and how we can address them, and I'm confident that a lot of that will be reflected on the work we go forward. Talent is massive. The skills shortage is a massive issue. We're not the only ones that are facing it. It is being felt across North America. But when you have 2% more people working now than you did prior to the pandemic here in British Columbia, we're one of the only provinces that have more people working now than prior to the pandemic. That's going to increase the pressure on our labor market extremely higher than everywhere else. And so three things that we're putting particular focus on. One, we announced just recently $95 million to provide reskilling and upskilling opportunities so that people can have the skills that they need to take on the opportunities. Second is childcare. It's critically important. We saw in March and April a massive decline in employment, in particular with women. And of course, that's sexism. We know that there's an issue where women have disproportionately had to take on the responsibilities and challenges of home. And many of the people probably on here are doing both home and work, and power to all the people who are amazing multitaskers. But we saw that in the pandemic in the stats when schools and childcare closed down, huge drop off in employment in women. Even September's numbers, Kim, if you notice September's numbers, there's an uptake in 13,000 employment in BC, all women, and a lot of part-time. So you're seeing women now, the kids are going back to school, coming back to the workforce. So we know affordable childcare is going to move that dial, and that investment with the federal government is significant. It's going to take some time. And the lastly is immigration. We need immigration.
Yes.
It's critically important. And I know that you and I agree, and I hope many of the listeners agree. We want people to come here not as just cheap labor. We want them to come, live, bring their families, contribute to our communities, coach our local hockey teams, because it just strengthens the fabric of our communities. And so we have just recently moved the tech PNP program and made it permanent to address some of the challenges we're facing in the tech sector. But we have more work to do, and my colleague, Minister Osborne, and I are going to be engaging with the federal government on how we can have more levers about who can come to British Columbia and how fast we can get people here. It's going to be a very important piece for us. I think I addressed the pieces. I think you had a third point in there as well. Affordability.
Yep.
I'll just say that, there's a saying that everyone was saying for the longest time, which is capital is mobile. And it's true. But what's true now in the pandemic is labor is mobile. We're seeing more and more people being able to work remotely, meaning that they don't have to live in communities where it's a little bit more expensive to live. They're moving to smaller communities throughout the province. And I'm having mayors from smaller communities reach out and say, hey, we have big city problems now. We need the mental health support. Can we talk to Minister Malcolmson? We need childcare. We need more affordable housing. And so it's not localized to Nanaimo or Victoria or to Vancouver or to Kamloops. It's now felt in all communities. That's why we've got one of the most ambitious housing plans that we're rolling out. Of course, people always get frustrated because they're like, you've announced this, but I don't see the housing. It takes, you announce the funding, it takes a year or two to build that housing for it to come online. It's starting to come online now, and we're going to see that significantly increase. And of course, with that is healthcare. And, the Premier said in the beginning of the pandemic, and it showed true, which is when you have healthy people, you have a healthy economy. And so, what I said in the earlier comments in the beginning was you can't disconnect the social from the economic. The pandemic has shown us that they're intertwined, and you must invest in both for moving things forward.
Yeah, truer words couldn't be spoken. I preach from that pulpit all the time. I was fortunate to be appointed to the Mayor's Task Force on Health and Housing, and at the same time appointed to the Mayor's Task Force on Economic Prosperity. And at first I said, no, I should be only sitting in one room and not both. And I quickly realized that, no, I should be sitting in both rooms because of what you just said, that, you can't have a healthy community without a healthy economy, and vice versa. They rely on each other to work going forward. I wanted to ask you a question about the future, because so much of what we're talking about are what we're doing today to impact the future. And my question is, how can the Young Leaders Council be focused on these issues as well? How can we keep them engaged in all of these things? What are we doing for them? What are they doing for us for the future?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question, Ken, because young people are facing extraordinary challenges, not only the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic. I mean, to reflect on, this will be the first generation that will not have what the other generations before them have had. Access to affordable housing, so much the lack of security that they have, the changing job market and the changing nature of work, extraordinary pressures on our young people. And so for us, launching the Young Leaders, the Premier's Advisory Group is going to play a critical role in making sure that the folks who are going to be most impacted by the policies that we design in government in going into the future have a voice in what that looks like. And so I'm excited. The application process is open. If there's young leaders that are watching today, or in fact, many of the organizations that are represented today might know of young people that fit perfectly into that, please reach out to Minister Malcolmson's office to get information on how they can apply. And we're going to be leaning on them quite a bit. And so far, from the engagements we've had with young people, they are up to the task and more. So looking forward to it.
We have a couple of questions in the chat box, but I know we're getting close to running out of time here. One of the most popular comments in the chat box today is about the $10 a day daycare, and the fact that will put so many people back into the workforce who are currently not in, and wishing to be back in to provide affordability for their families in their homes. Signe from United Way BC points out, thanks to the health ministry through the at United Way BC, through the Food Security Initiative, nonprofits can apply for grants And I'm just saying this because there's money on the table here, folks. If you have a nonprofit, Signe has provided the address UWBC for United Way BC.ca/food security, and find out how you can get your hands on that. But lots of kudos in the chat box, and perhaps I'll make that formal by turning it back over to Aaron now so that he can provide thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Minister Kahlon, for the overview and the recovery plans, initiatives, and the opportunities, as mentioned, that are there now and in the future. On behalf of myself and our colleagues at MMP and our 5 offices across the island, we're proud to sponsor this event, and we see the opportunities, and we're optimistic that our small business community will be able to adapt, innovate, and grow through these times and into the future to help support our local communities and economies. On behalf of the people who have attended, I also would like to say thank you to everyone who has taken the time today. And again, to Minister Malcolmson and Minister Kahlon, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate everything you've gone through. And with that, Kim, I'll turn it back to you for closing remarks.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate that. Thank you very much for moderating today, Aaron, and thank you to MNP for sponsoring and being so supportive of our chamber. Thank you to chamber members from around Vancouver Island and businesses from around Vancouver Island who joined us today. This is part of our ongoing virtual event series. I thought in the summertime when we excitedly received the news that we're entering stage 3 and should prepare for stage 4, I was excited to say, well, that's the end of virtual events and we're all going back to partying in person, but that's not the case quite yet. And then we realized the value of these virtual events is really quite high, especially when we have exciting content and fantastic guests. Which I think we met today. So our next live event, we're going to try a live event. We're going to figure this one out. We're doing a business mixer, a networking event at Melange Restaurant on Thursday the 21st at 5 o'clock. It'll be some fun trying to figure out how we do that, but show up and see. Then we have future events. We're doing, once again, MNP has provided some subject matter expertise on cybersecurity, super important topic in these days, as well as Walter Anderson, past chair of the chamber, who specializes in cybersecurity, will be there. He has joined us before, a very popular presenter. We have Isabelle Mercier-Turcotte coming back for Women in Leadership in Nonprofits, a virtual presentation on that. And that will also, the other panelists on that are the 2 women who tied for Leaders of the Year in the recent Nanaimo Business Awards broadcast on Check TV. And a 3rd winner for nonprofits, that's Deb Hollins from Family Life. And the other 2 women, of course, Kix Kitten from Nanaimo Brain Injury Society and Erin Baudouin from Eden Gardens. Really excited about that one coming up. So keep your eyes on our calendar of events on the chamber website, nanaimochamber.bc.ca. Lots of good announcements there. Sign up for our newsletter. And here we go. Another weekend coming up, a few hours to go for that. Everybody enjoy yourselves. And I understand that if you're anywhere between Duncan and Nanaimo, you're going to grow duck wings over the weekend and be prepared for the winter. So thanks everybody for joining in. Thank you to the 2 ministers. So greatly appreciated. Take care, everybody. See you next time.